Today, major European airports are disrupted by a cyberattack. Estonia says Russian jets entered its airspace in the latest test for NATO. Tech companies brace for a new $100,000 fee per year for H-1B visas. The US and China make progress on a Tik Tok deal, and what to expect from a packed weekend of global sports. It's Saturday, September 20th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes, 7 days a week. I'm Tara Oakes in London. First, flight delays and cancellations after a cyber attack at a provider of check-in and boarding systems disrupted operations at several major European airports. Passengers with a flight scheduled are advised to confirm their travel plans with airlines before heading to the airport. You can read more on this story as it develops on Reuters.com and the Reuters app. The Estonian government says 3 Russian military jets violated its airspace for 12 minutes. Estonia is a NATO member, and the incident is the latest in a series of recent military actions by Russia that have rattled the alliance. Russia's defense ministry has denied its jets violated Estonian airspace, saying they flew over neutral waters. Our national security reporter, Graham Slattery, in Washington, D.C., has been looking into the incident.
They're looking at this with a lot of preoccupation. The principal concern of NATO is that Russia has territorial ambitions beyond just Ukraine. A lot of Western intelligence services believe this to be the case. So whenever you have Russian incursions into a NATO country, be it Poland or Estonia or wherever else, the concern is that perhaps this presages something much more aggressive in the future.
Graham says security experts say these incidents could offer intel to the Kremlin.
What happened in Estonia, it's simply too early to tell. Most intelligence services won't have made a formal determination. However, every time Russia does something like this, they fly some jets or some drones into the airspace of a NATO country, and then they watch that country and NATO as a whole react. And when they do that, of course, they gather some intelligence as to how NATO would react in the case of a much more serious incursion.
The Trump administration has announced it will impose a $100,000 a year fee on H-1B worker visas. It's potentially a major blow to the technology sector that relies heavily on skilled workers from India and China. But President Trump says he doesn't think tech CEOs will be concerned.
I think they're going to be very happy. Everyone's going to be happy. And we're going to be able to keep people in our country that are going to be very productive people.
Microsoft and JP Morgan have already advised their H-1B visa holders to remain in the United States. In other tech news, President Trump says he and China's President Xi Jinping have made progress on a Tik Tok deal. The leaders spoke on a call for the first time in 3 months, and Trump says they plan to meet face-to-face in 6 weeks in South Korea. Trump credits Tik Tok with helping him win the 2024 election by connecting him with younger voters. And while US officials say a framework deal has been reached, what it looks like remains unclear. White House reporter Trevor Honeycutt has more.
This is an extremely complicated financial transaction, right, as well as a political one. And so a lot of the details are still going to have to be hashed out in terms of who controls this algorithm. Do the Chinese still control this algorithm? Do they still have a stake in the company? Does the U.S. government have a stake in the company? And how does that affect all of the investors that want a piece of the action here? And so all of that is still an open question.
The UN General Assembly kicks off this week with leaders from across the globe set to arrive in New York. And the Trump administration plans to take its tough stance on immigration to the meeting. Officials will be presenting a proposal that would sharply limit the right to asylum. Under the plan, asylum seekers would have to ask for protection in the first country they enter, not a country of their choosing. Asylum would be temporary, and host countries would decide when it's safe to send people home. Immigration reporter Ted Hessen says refugee advocates are warning that people fleeing persecution could be left with nowhere to go.
This is really an attempt by the Trump administration to take their own domestic immigration policy and export it globally. And it's important to note they're going before this body, the United Nations, which actually crafted the sort of framework for asylum that we have today. In 1951 and 1967, in these sort of seminal agreements of countries around the world that defined who would be a refugee and who would be able to seek asylum. And now they're talking about wanting to revisit that and reopen them and say that, no, they're not working for today and we want to do it differently. So that's really hugely significant.
And if you're interested in asylum policy, our latest episode of our long-form On Assignment podcast takes a look at the lasting impact of an unprecedented surge of migration to Europe 10 years ago, with many fleeing war and poverty in the Middle East and Africa.
For me, I want to work. I want to have a life. I want to have kids. To take them to the school without afraid that a bomb will come over them and kill them.
We look at how that influx has transformed the continent and its politics.
Wir schaffen das. Wir schaffen das und
We'll put a link to the pod in today's description, and you can hear On Assignment wherever you get your podcasts. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s vaccine advisory panel has voted to drop broad support for the COVID shot. Instead, they say it should be offered to all ages, but only after a shared decision with a healthcare provider. The call would typically maintain access through health insurance. It's time now for our sports roundup with our global sports editor, Ocean Shine.
We've got a great variety of sport coming up this weekend. Most notably, perhaps, is the World Cycling Championships, which, after best part of a century clattering over Belgian cobblestones and wandering through French vineyards, finally in Africa for the very first time in Kigali in Rwanda, is hosting the World Road Championships. And the setting is going to be absolutely spectacular, but it's not all about the scenery. There is going to be some fantastic sport. We've got time trial metronome Remco Evenepoel against Tadej Pogačar, two of the biggest names in cycling coming head-to-head. Evenepoel is chasing a third straight time trial crown, which would really etch his name deeper into the history books, whereas Pogačar, he's looking to win the Tour de France and the World Championships in the same year. It's going to be a fascinating showdown in a brand new setting and a new panorama for world cycling, perhaps.
And of course, it's the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, where Noah Lyles scorched to a fourth successive World 200 metres gold on Friday.
We've had an exhilarating first week of the World Championships in Tokyo, and that's now coming into a really exciting climax this weekend, which is the relays. America's new sprint queen, Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, she'll be leading the US women there. She's the new 100-metre world champion. And there's going to be big showdowns expected with the Jamaicans, which are always pure voltage. And of course, there's always something for the petrol heads in Week of Sport. This time it's Formula One. It roars back for what could be a history-making Azerbaijan Grand Prix. There are multiple permutations which would see McLaren win the Constructors' Championships. And that will see them move second in the all-time list with 10 titles, behind only Ferrari on 16. And Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris 1-2 would do it, but so would a number of other results. I suspect either way we're going to hear lots of McLaren champagne this weekend.
And finally, a British couple released by the Taliban have reunited with their family. Barbie Reynolds, who's 76, and her husband Peter, who's 80, arrived in Qatar after being freed from 8 months in captivity in Afghanistan. The couple, who ran a charity and had lived in Afghanistan for 18 years, were detained in February and released after months of negotiations between Qatar and Britain. And for today's recommended read, a special report into Syria, looking at how the country split along the Euphrates River after the fall of Bashar al-Assad, with divisions remaining between Islamist-controlled government forces and Kurdish-led fighters. You can read the story by following the link in the pod description. For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favourite podcast player. And if you're listening on a smart speaker, just ask for the latest news from Reuters 7 days a week. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.